was working in an office in St. Louis for 18 years. Worked in hotels for 4 years prior to that. Sitting at a desk, taking phone orders. But I didn't think I wanted to do that the rest of my life. I just was sitting at my desk in St. Louis. I had 3 weeks of paid vacation. I was able to buy a new car every 4 years. Was comfortable, but I didn't see myself being at 60 or 62 or 65 sitting at that desk and doing that job. And I felt that if I didn't try this at age 44 at that time, that I would probably regret it. So I took the leap. I was raised in the Methodist Church, was in the Methodist Church, not by my choice, but I was involved in a youth ministry and was organist and pianist. When I went to college, I left all that behind and was really not involved at all. But at 40, I started thinking about my spiritual life and where I should be and where I should go. And I picked up a book called 7-Story Mountain and read about Thomas Merton's life as a young man and coming into the church and then coming into the monastery. So I decided that maybe I would look at the Catholic Church and see if that's the community I needed to be a member of. When I thought about entering the Catholic Church, I sat my mom down and my dad down and let them know about this. And the first words out of my mom's mouth was, "We're so glad you're coming back to a faith community. We don't know about the Catholic Church, but just keep us informed, give us some education." So they were both there for my confirmation. When I let my dad know that I was thinking about coming up for as a postulant to test this life, the first words out of his mouth was, what can I do? How can I help? I took my boss out to lunch and let him know that I was quitting and that I was going to try this. We had a good discussion. A couple of weeks later, the president, who's just a few years older than I am, brought me up to his office, and I let him know that I was going to a monastery to try a vocation, and I was leaving the company. And he says, "Well, if you're going to a monastery, I guess there's no counter offer here, is there?" And I said, "No." Waving money in my face is not going to do much at this point in my life. The silence, for me, was difficult. We had psychological testing here. I entered a community, an older community, and being on my own here, it was sometimes quite difficult. I remember one January, February, after Vespers, being in my room, and just had the feeling I need to be around somebody. I didn't have to talk with somebody. I just needed to be in the same room with them. So I turned my light off in my cell, and I go down to the library. The library's totally dark. So I go down into the refectory, and the refectory's totally dark. So I go back to my room and just realize that this is the life that God has chosen for me, that I've chosen, that I'm just going to have to get through this and live with this. There's a rhythm, but there's also a balance. When the bell goes off at 3:15 in the morning, it still kind of alarms me sometimes, but this is a life I've chosen. And so we roll out of bed, and it's a very peaceful time of day. It's very quiet at 3:30 in the morning, coming down as a group, as a community, to worship and to pray. After that is a time for Lectio Divina, reading the scriptures. And then at 6:30, we begin Lauds, and that begins the official day. But the period is broken up to periods of prayer, and then our labor, and then prayer and our labor. Coming from an office in St. Louis, my first 2 years working here was working in a garden with Brother Placid, a man who was my father's age. In the garden, there were no cell phones, there were no phones at all, no fax machines, no computers, and that was a good formation, I think, for myself, a very good formation for myself. It was very easy to find God and whether you're, hoeing carrots or whether you're hoeing corn or planting seeds. I met a community that was very warm, very open, very inviting. I just had this feeling with some conversations with God that He was calling me to this place, that this, I felt, was home for me.